So, you've chosen the path of frost, ice, winter, commanding the very essence of cold in your veins. Then this is the build for you. Welcome everybody, my name is Rusty Pie Lover, ginger streamer, professional high-pitched screamer, entertainer extraordinaire. And welcome to the Diablo 4 Frost Sorcerer / Sorceress build. Before we get into it, just a couple of stuff that we need to go through. Number one, thank you for all the comments on the previous video, and thank you for pointing out a couple of stuff. Number one, the Codex of Power indicates item aspects that we are going to apply, so please take these builds as an either or from now on. Also, in some of the skills, apparently you can only have one upgrade of each particular skill under your basic offensive, defensive skills. So take this also as an and/or. We still don't know what the items of Diablo 4 will do, so for now treat it as an and/or, and if we find items that give us the ability to add more points into those skills, then we'll cover that. Until then, these are and/or. So I'm going to give you full details of how I've constructed this build, and then you go and adjust it just how you want to. Just another side note, the Diablo 4 builder has now been updated with Paragon points, but unfortunately at the time of recording it just seems to have generic text, so I can't tell you which Paragon points to put in where. So for now, up until that is updated, we are just going to focus on the skills, no items, and that's how it's going to be. A bit of background on this particular build. We are going to focus on a pure frost / cold / ice build, whatever you want to call this, with the main focus being our spells to do as much freezing damage as possible. Note, however, that this is putting all our eggs in one basket, and you might want to diversify your build with some fire and lightning, just to ensure that if frost immune enemies do pitch up on the battlefield, that this build is not going to help you destroy those monsters. So be careful with the sorceress. This is going to be a tweak build, but if you want to go pure frost and maybe do something later on where you adjust your skills to how you want your playstyle, we're just going to focus on that for now. And then if you want to, let me know in the comment section below how you plan to diversify your build. Which skills would you swap out? Which upgrades would you swap out? But for now, let's get into it. So first we're going to cover the Codex of Power. These are split up into defensive, offensive, resource, utility, and mobility. Starting with the defensive, we have Snow Veiled Aspect. Casting ice armor makes you unstoppable for 2 seconds. Snow Guard's Aspect. While within your own blizzard, you take 10% less damage. Aspect of Might. Basic skills grant 25% damage reduction for 4 seconds. Aspect of the Unwavering. Taking direct damage has a 5% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills. On the offensive side, Edgemaster's Aspect. Skills deal up to times 24% increased damage based on available resource when cast, receiving the full benefit while at full resource. Aspect of Biting Cold. When you freeze an enemy, there is a 25% chance they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. Elementalist's Aspect. Core or Mastery skills cast at or above 100 mana gain a 20% increased critical strike chance. Aspect of Piercing Cold. Ice shards pierce 4 times, dealing 20% less damage per subsequent enemy hit. Aspect of Control. You deal 30% more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. And Aspect of Pummeling. Deal times 40% increased damage to stun, knock down, or frozen enemies. Under your resource, Aspect of Efficiency. Casting a basic skill reduces the mana cost of your next core skill by 10%. Under your utility, Aspect of Shared Misery. Lucky Hit. When you hit a crowd-controlled enemy, there is up to a 30% chance for that crowd-controlled enemy to spread to another unaffected enemy. And finally, on mobility, Aspect of the Bounding Conduit. gain 20% movement speed for 3 seconds after teleporting. So as we said with the aspects, these are going to be aspects that you slot in your weapons, and these you can use as an either or swapping out build. Now, whether we can hold all these aspects on these particular things all at the same time might be possible. However, you might have to adjust your build to how you want to change it. Either you're going to go more for a defensive damage dealer in terms of Frost, or you're going to go for the offensive damage dealer in terms of this particular Frost build. But as you can see, with your mobility and your utility, you're really limited to what you can pick there. Not limited in the sense that you can't diversify your build, but also limited to the particular element that we are using, which is Frost. And as I said, go check out the link in the description or in the pinned comment to go and check out these skills and these aspects and really decide how you want to build your sorcerer for Diablo 4. Skills are also divided into these particular categories. We will have our basic, our core, defensive, conjuration, mastery, ultimate, and capstone. Before I jump into these skills, please note one little interesting fact about the sorcerer is that we have an enchantment slot as well, up to 3 enchantment slots. So this is really where you can go and diversify your build and put 3 passive effects into your sorcerers, basically giving you 9 skills instead of 6. Now again, with this particular build, we are going to look at both the enchantment slot as well as the active skill, and based on that you can decide how you want to build your Frost sorcerer. So with our basic skill, we are going to start with Frost Bolt, lucky hit chance 30%. Throw a bolt of frost at an enemy, dealing 35% damage and chilling them for 15%. Enchantment effect, lucky hit. Your direct damage has up to a 100% chance to chill for 30%. And then our upgrade options, enhanced Frost Bolt. Frost Bolt has a 15% chance to explode on chilled targets, hitting surrounding enemies. Chance increased to 100% against frozen targets. Then we've got Glinting Frost Bolt. Frost Bolt generates 4 mana when hitting chilled or frozen enemies. And then we've got Flickering Frost Bolt. Frost Bolt makes frozen enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Core skills, where we are going to use Frozen Orb. Mana cost 40, lucky hit chance 20%. Unleash an orb that chills for 34% and expels piercing shards, dealing a total of 32% damage. Upon expiration, Frozen Orb explodes, dealing 29% damage and chilling enemies for 9%. Enchantment effect. Whenever you cast a non-basic skill, you have a 20% chance to launch a Frozen Orb at a nearby enemy. And Frozen Orb's upgrade options. Enhanced Frozen Orb. When cast above 50 mana, Frozen Orb's explosion damage is increased by times 30%. Greater Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb's explosion has a 25% chance to make all enemies hit vulnerable for 2 seconds. And Destructive Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb's explosion restores 5 mana when hitting a frozen enemy. Ice Shards. Mana cost 30. Lucky hit chance 25%. Launch 5 shards that deal 25% damage each. Deals times 25% increased damage to frozen enemies. An enchantment effect. Ice shards automatically conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. And the upgrade options here are enhanced ice shards. Ice shards have a 15% chance to ricochet to another enemy. Greater ice shards. While you have a barrier active, ice shards treat enemies as if they were frozen. And destructive ice shards. Hitting an enemy with 5 ice shards in a single cast makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. To further upgrade under the core tree, we are going to go with Devastation. Deal times 8% increased damage to healthy enemies. And upgrading Devastation to Elemental Dominance. Your damage increases over time up to a maximum of 8% after 3 seconds. Casting a skill resets this effect. So just to clarify what we're going to be doing here, we are going to make sure that we do as much frozen damage as possible with our basic skills and our core skills. And what this will accomplish is we have a vast variety of things that we can do, but we mainly want enemies to be frozen. And this is also where your defensive skills are going to come into play, which we will cover in a second. but we mainly want to have a lot of outgoing burst damage, but also damage that can control the tide of the battle and give us that real big crowd control effect. Now this is again where you can either put Frozen Orb or Ice Shards as one of your enchantments. And this again is really how you want to build it. Me personally, I'm going to use Frozen Orb as my main damage dealer, try and get as many enemies hit, chill them and frost them while having a possible barrier up, and then treat them as frozen so that Ice Shards automatically cast out of me and go towards the frozen enemies. You can also swap it the other way around, but this again is how you want to play the Sorceress. And again, we are purely focusing on frost. So if you go and check out these skills, you can add a whole lot of other things to this. Defensive side, where we are going to use Frost Nova. Cooldown 15 seconds. There's a number of charges. Charge cooldown is a number of seconds. Unleash a torrent of frost, freezing enemies around you for 2 seconds. Enchantment effect, lucky hit. Critical strikes have up to a 30% chance to make your active conjuration skills unleash a Frost Nova. And then under Frost Nova upgrades, we've got Enhanced Frost Nova. Frost Nova's radius is increased by 25%. Mystical Frost Nova. Frost Nova's freeze duration is increased by 20% when hitting 3 or more enemies. And Shimmering Frost Nova. Frost Nova generates 4 mana per enemy hit. Ice Armor. Cooldown 20 seconds. A barrier of ice forms around you for 6 seconds, absorbing 30% of your base life in damage. While Ice Armor is active, 10% of your cold damage dealt is added to its barrier. Enchantment effect. Upon getting hit, you have a 5% chance to apply Ice Armor. And upgrade options for Ice Armor is Enhanced Ice Armor. While Ice Armor is active, your mana regeneration is increased by 25%. Shimmering Ice Armor. Enemies that hit you while Ice Armor is active have a 15% chance to be frozen for 3 seconds. Or Mystical Ice Armor. While Ice Armor's barrier is at or above its original amount, you deal times 30% increased damage. So this is where you can go with that little bit of a glass cannon build. It is part and parcel of the skills, and whether you want to stand in the middle of the field and do what you want to do with all of your skills, or you want to run around, it really is up to you. Conjuration, we are going to go with Ice Blades. Cooldown 12 seconds. Lucky hit chance 71%. Conjure Ice Blades for 6 seconds that rapidly slashes enemies for 31% damage and has a 20% chance to make them vulnerable for 2 seconds. Enchantment effect. Killing an enemy has a 10% chance to conjure Ice Blades. And to further upgrade these, you have the options of Enhanced Ice Blades. Ice Blades has a 10% increased chance to make enemies vulnerable. You have Invoked Ice Blades. Killing a vulnerable enemy increases your active Ice Blades duration by 1 second. And Summoned Ice Blades. Every time Ice Blades hits a vulnerable enemy, gain 25% attack speed up to 100. Mastery. And under Mastery, we are going to go with Blizzard. Mana cost 40. Lucky hit chance 33%. Summon a Frigid Blizzard that deals 120% damage and continuously chills enemies for 18% over 6 seconds. Enchantment effect. Every 15 seconds, a blizzard forms over you and follows you for 4 seconds. And our upgrade options are Enhanced Blizzard. Blizzard's duration is increased by 2 seconds. Wizard's Blizzard. While you have an active blizzard, your core skills cost 10% less mana. And Mage's Blizzard. Every second an enemy is in blizzard, they take times 2.5% increased damage from you up to times 20%. And then also under your mastery, we are going to go with Icy Veil. Your barriers have a 5% increased duration. We're going to go with Hoarfrost. You deal more damage to enemies the more chilled they are, up to times 6% while they are frozen. And Cold Front, while you have a barrier active, you apply 8% more chill. So as you can see, with the Conjuration and the Mastery, we are really just all-inning on all of the cold damage to ensure that all of our damage dealt is increased based on the status effects of the enemies around. And not only will enemies be slow, chilled, and frozen, making sure that you survive all these fights, but you are dealing an insane amount of damage, making sure you have some mana regen, and the defensive capabilities to not get one shot. And again, you can go and change up some skills, change up your enchantment slots, and really find the build that works best for you. Now, I don't believe we are only limited to Frost in this build, but since we're going for a pure Frost Mage build, this is the way you'll want to go. Ultimate skill, Deep Freeze, cooldown 60 seconds, lucky hit chance 45%, encase yourself in ice, becoming immune for 4 seconds, continually chilling enemies for up to 20%. When Deep Freeze ends, frozen enemies shatter for 200%. Casting Deep Freeze again ends the effect early. Under that we have 2 upgrade options. Prime Deep Freeze, gain 5% of your base life as a barrier for 6 seconds for each enemy shattered by Deep Freeze, or Supreme Deep Freeze, when Deep Freeze ends, your non-ultimate cooldowns are reduced by 50%. And then under your ultimate, just to buff up all these things, we are going to go with Frostbite. You deal 3% more damage to frozen or vulnerable enemies, and times 6% more damage to enemies who are both frozen and vulnerable. Permafrost, Frost skills deal times 5% increased damage to elites. Snap Freeze, lucky hit. Frost skills have up to a 3% chance to instantly freeze. And Icy Touch, you deal times 4% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So as you can see, we will not be doing any enchantment effects on the ultimate skills because those are not allowed to be enchanted. However, based on some of the buffs under this particular tree, you can see how you are going to increase all the amount of cold damage you are going to be doing. You're going to be standing in your blizzard, casting Deep Freeze. Your enemies have no chance. But before we round off this build, we have capstones to pick. And the capstone that we are going with is either Icefall, lucky hit. Your Frost skills have up to a 10% chance to make your next Ice Shards, Frozen Orb, or Blizzard consume no mana and deal times 40% more damage. Chance is doubled against vulnerable enemies. Or Shatter. After freeze expires, enemies explode for 25% of the damage you dealt to them while frozen. And that right there is your Frost Sorcerer / Sorceress build. So as you can see, we are going to be focusing on heavy amounts of crowd control in terms of chill, freeze, and just keeping enemies at bay. Make sure that they're slowed, deal an insane amount of damage, and then really let our enchantments do the rest of the work while we're actively using skills. Now again, just to reiterate my point, if you are not comfortable with going purely a Frost build, which again I would highly go against, and I know that's ironic since I'm making this build. However, you will find enemies that are Frost resistant, cold resistant, ice resistant, whichever you want to do it, and immune. So you are going to run into trouble with this if you don't multi-spec into lightning and into fire. However, if you want to be purely Frost, this I believe is probably the best build. And with the Paragon board now being on the builder, I would say give it about a week from time of release of video to see if they've updated all the text there. Then we will go into Paragon skills eventually for these builds. Let me know what you think about this. What would you change? Are you going to go for a pure Frost build, or are you going to change it up? Are there things that you don't agree with here that you would rather do? Are you going to change up the build? Let me know down below. I'm looking forward to your reply. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I really hope that you did enjoy the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, possibly subscribing for more Diablo 4 content, and later in the week we will be covering the Rogue. If you haven't checked out my previous Diablo 4 build video, we were covering the Druid, and it's right over here. You can go give it some love. Let me know what you thought, and which class are you starting to get really excited for? Diablo 4, while a little bit away, is starting to creep up on us. Are you looking forward to being a sorcerer? Let me know. Until then, Sanctuary waits.